one vacant seat, and there is a quorum of 4.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ellis. We'll now move on to general public comment. General public comment is for items that are not on the agenda tonight. And our moderator, Eric Roberts, will be taking it from here. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Vice Chair Bauer. I see one hand raised with our attendees tonight. I'll go ahead and share my timer. For our attendees joining us tonight, just so you know, you can raise your hand at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and I'll call on you in the order in which you've raised your hand. Shakti Kennedy, I've allowed you to speak. You'll need to unmute.
Thank you. And actually, this is Darren Rackison, Shakti's husband. I had to figure out how to change the name on the iPad. Just as a general comment, not related to the Spring Hill School that we are adjacent to, I was curious if any of the commission had or was involved in kind of decision making around the general plan and the housing element. I know one of the big considerations right now is to promote high efficiency land use in Petaluma. I'm someone who really has been a big believer in trying to defend existing natural resources and not kind of sprawl anymore into wetlands, river, old growth forest, other areas of that nature. So I love the idea of transitioning kind of low efficiency land use, like high parking lot ratios, single story, strip malls and business parks, things of that nature. And I was just curious, the Planning Commission, if there was kind of a salient set of strategies that people were aware of to help kind of with that transition. We talk about rezoning again to that mixed first floor business, multi-unit resident or multi-floor residential above, which I know is again going to be an item on tonight's agenda. Just wondering what the set of solutions was to encourage existing private property owners to switch to these more efficient land uses. Because again, I love this idea of upgrading essentially instead of encroaching anymore into natural spaces. And I've heard some ideas thrown out there, including, public benefit corporations that are essentially citizens that come together and buy the property and redevelop it. But, this is part of my own ignorance of the process, but just as we talk about, rezoning areas, again, in the context of general plan, housing element, those discussions that happen where they identify those low quality land uses, how they could be rezoned, how they could be made more efficient. How do you guys envision working with private property owners to kind of influence or implement those changes, obviously without, any kind of coercion in that process? Just really curious about that. I'm sure you guys have some great thoughts if there's the time to answer. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Darren McCuson. And I'm not seeing any additional hands raised. I'll stop sharing my screen and pass it back to Vice Chair Bauer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Roberts. We'll close general public comment for now and move on to item number 4, which is committee comment. We usually start with a council liaison report for Council Member McDonald, but he's not here tonight, so we'll skip that part. And we'll move on to the Pedestrian and Bicycle Committee report by Commissioner Hooper.
Thank you. And I was only able to attend that meeting part of the way through. I was a bit ill that night and ended up having to leave early. I will say the PBAC was working through a lot of its long-term goals for its active transit plan. It was getting through kind of the nuts and bolts of that. But I was not able to attend the full meeting. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Commissioner Hooper. Okay, we'll move on to item number 4C, which is the Tree Advisory Committee, and we'll have that reported out by Commissioner Wisman.
Thank you, Vice Chair Bauer. No update from the Tree Advisory Committee, no meeting since our last Planning Commission meeting.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Wisman. Are there any other committee comments right now? Okay, I don't see any. So now we'll move on to the director's report, and we'll get that from Ms. Heather Hines.
Good evening, Vice Chair Bauer, commissioners, members of the public. I have a number of things to bring up. So I wanted to introduce, and he's not able to be at this meeting tonight, but we do have a new community development director for the city. Alex Greenwood started 2 weeks ago, so kind of jumping in and getting settled into his new role. So we're happy to have him. I know that you guys met Andrew at last month's Planning Commission meeting. So Andrew Triple is our new planning manager. So wanted to let you know that I will be stepping down as your liaison, and Andrew will be stepping into that role as the liaison for the Planning Commission. So really happy to have Andrew on board, have Andrew coming up to speed and stepping into that role. So I'm really excited for him to be in that role. So wanted to give you the heads up of that starting at your next meeting. Andrew will be filling that position. Also did want to, I know that Evelyn sent out a query about a quorum for the June 21st meeting. We do have a quorum. So we are tentatively planning to have that June 21st special meeting for the Scott Ranch Davidon project. So that's a final EIR and the other entitlements along with that project. So please, commissioners, do hold that date, and we'll let you know as soon as possible if that doesn't move forward on that date. But we were happy to see we had a quorum. Let's see, goals and priorities. I think last meeting, the commission offered some suggestions and some feedback based on that initial list from the council. A number of the items that were approved as being in the top 10 of the council will kind of overlap with the Planning Commission's purview. Includes a retail cannabis ordinance, an updated tree ordinance, electrification of existing buildings in an effort to reach our carbon neutrality goals, and rehabilitation of the trestle, along with Just Cause Ellis Act mobile home ordinance update, and ped bike facilities and safety. So a lot of those, even if they're not and exactly about land use, there's overlap. There's things that I'm sure the commission will see as it comes through for adoption. And then also just to kind of try to fill in a little bit for Councilmember McDonald's absent, and an update on activity at council. Last night there was a budget workshop where the council discussed the budget. So that is set for first reading at the next meeting. Also at next week's meeting is a fine balance at the H Street Pocket Park. So a revised scope of that public artwork and a new location at the H Street Pocket Park, as well as the density bonus associated with the 890 co-op project, which came before you, I believe, last month. So that one going up to the council for approval of the density bonus housing agreement. And then finally, I just wanted to, if it isn't already on your radar, tomorrow night's Know Before You Grow meeting, 7 to 8:30, and the new general manager of SMART is going to be making a presentation. So should be interesting to kind of get an overview of the new leadership at SMART and some of the plans and the overlap with the city of Petaluma. So that's what I have for you, unless there's any questions of me.
Are there any questions of Ms. Hines? Nope, thank you very much. We'll close out that item. And before we go though, I'll say welcome to Mr. Triple. We're happy to have you aboard, and you have big shoes to fill. I'm sure you'll do a good job.
Thank you. And yes, I do know that, and I will do my very best to try to fill them, although I know I won't. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the approval of minutes now. We're approving minutes for the meeting of Tuesday, April 26th, 2022. Are there any comments or edits for those tonight? Nope, seeing none, we'll go ahead and approve those minutes. And now we'll move on to new business, which is a SPAR review for the Spring Hill Road expansion. And I'm gonna let Associate Planner Michael Janisic take over from here. Michael, take it away.
Thank you,
Oh,
Chair.
sorry, before we go, I'm sorry, Michael, I just wanted to ask first if any commissioners have any ex parte communications they'd like to disclose at this time. I don't see any, so no, we can hand it over to you then, Michael.
Great. Thank you, Chair Bauer, and good evening, commissioners. Just give me a moment to share my presentation here. And just want to confirm you're seeing my cursor and great. Okay. So again, my name is Mike Janusek. I'm an associate planner with the city, and I'll be presenting the staff report for the SPAR application of Spring Hill School portable classrooms. Just to give an overview of my presentation this evening, I'll give a background and kind of a context of the development site. I'll go through the project description and show exhibits of the plan set, floor plan and elevations. I'll summarize the neighborhood outreach as well as the public comment. And I'll summarize findings against the standards of review. And then I'll offer staff's recommendation to the commission. So looking at a vicinity map, the neighborhood is bound by Bodega Avenue to the north, Bantam Way to the west, Western Avenue to the south, and then the property is along Webster Street, which runs down the middle of the screen here. And you can see it's from an aerial photo, primarily single family homes. There are some large institutional uses though. Notably, you can see Petaluma Junior High. You can see Valley Vista Elementary School. There's also the Church of Latter-day Saints up here. There's also at the corner of Webster and Western, there are neighborhood commercial properties. Looking north on Webster Street, you can see the single family neighborhood to the east, and then the existing sanctuary building and the relatively newly constructed campus of Spring Hill School. Here's the opposite view looking south on Webster. On the left-hand side, you have the play lot for Valley Vista Elementary. Here's a view looking towards the back of the site as viewed from Townview Lane cul-de-sac. And you can see there's an existing 6-foot wood fence. There's a few deciduous trees. This is from 2 or 3 years ago, because you can see the existing main campus building is being constructed, but it still gives you an idea of its bulk and massing. Here's the front of the school on Webster Street. You can see the contemporary design of the main campus building, and then the existing sanctuary building, which is quite tall. And you can see the existing pedestrian access and the drop-off aisle, and then the gate beyond those gates, the hardscape quad of the school campus. Here's the rear of the site where the portable classrooms will be located. You can see that there is a grade differential, and the property steps up as you walk back, and that it's about 7 feet of difference between the building pad of the campus building and then the existing garden space. There's also bioswale that's built into that hillside. And then beyond that fence line, that's where the vantage point of Townview Lane cul-de-sac, where the picture was showing previously. Here's the general plan land use map. Just like the aerial depicted, it's predominantly single family residential. And then you have a mix of larger institutional properties. Here's the zoning map. So of note, Townview Lane is a PUD. And the property is also split zoned, which is a unique existing condition. It's a bit outside the scope of this project, but the main campus building was in the civic facilities portion of the site, whereas this expansion is in the R2 portion of the site. The development standards, for all intents and purposes, the development standards are the same because the CF zone adopts the abutting zoning district standards apply in the CF zone. So both were designed using the development standards of the R2 district. I'll also note here that the school use requires a CUP in both the CF zone and the R2 zone. And the applicant, when they applied for the SPAR for the main campus building in 2017, they also bundled that with the CUP request, and that was adopted by Planning Commission, and that's in your packet tonight as attachment B. And again, that allows the conditional use for the school in these districts. So before the commission tonight is a SPAR for the school expansion. It's a major non-residential addition, and it's referred to the commission tonight under IZO section 24010F. And we'll go through the physical improvements, such as the site plan, elevations, floor plan, landscaping, and other site improvements. So the physical improvements that are proposed, the main campus building and the sanctuary building, those will be retained, and they won't be affected by the proposal. The scope of the project is limited to the 2,880 square foot modular classroom structure, and then the associated outdoor gathering spaces, or the associated outdoor gathering space, including an extension of the ramp and also fencing and landscaping improvements. So here's existing main campus building. Here's the existing sanctuary, Webster Street, and then in the northwest corner, this is where the expansion will go. And you'll see that it aligns with it maintains the same setback as the main campus, which exceeds the 5-foot minimum interior side yard setback. There's actually 18 feet 10 inches provided, and then there's 21 feet provided for the rear setback where 20 is required. This oblique view shows the hardscape improvements and the continuity of the quad space. And there will be 3 tables, 6 built-in benches. There'll be these raised planters with additional trees. And I'd like to point out that the overall composition of the landscape design and the architectural design are integrated. And then also that the same can be said about the proposed expansion and then the existing campus. They're also integrated in terms of design and style. The operational characteristics that are governed by the approved conditional use will not be affected. The proposal before you tonight is consistent with all the conditions of approval in the 2017 CUP. The one change that will occur is sort of just some shifting of the programming in the interior spaces, and the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade classrooms will will no longer be located in the main campus, and they'll be in the additional classrooms, and those spaces will revert to the original intent of multi-purpose support spaces like the library, art studio, conference rooms, and cafeteria. So here's a close-up of the floor plan. Currently, the 3rd grade classroom is located in the library, and it's a much smaller space, and so now that'll have a classroom of equal size to the 4th and 5th grade classrooms. Showing the elevations and the materials board. You can see it repeats similar facade as the main campus structure. There's the standing seam metal panels, the cedar siding, and then this board form concrete is used on the raised planters. You can also see that the height profile in terms of elevation is nearly identical to what's existing. So the applicant held a virtual neighborhood meeting on January 27th, 2022, and roughly 8 neighbors attended. And the main theme of concern had to do with visual impact of the new structure, and then the project was noticed for this hearing on April 28th. It was published in the newspaper and then also mailed to owners and occupants within a 1,000-foot radius of the site. And then all the public comments were forwarded. One was provided at the time of publication of the packet, and then the remaining 3 were forwarded to you after publication. So all planning commissioners should have been in receipt of those. To summarize all the public comments, the issues pertain to views from Townview Lane, quality of the architectural materials, energy efficiency of the portable classrooms, HVAC noise, siting of the building, demolition of the sanctuary building, lot coverage, and stormwater runoff. And I'd like to drill down into 2 of those topics. The first being enhanced screening, which came up to address the neighborhood meeting concern of visual impact. So after the meeting, staff collaborated with the design team to propose a solution in the form of enhanced screening. And so the existing 6-foot wood fence will have an additional 2-foot lattice at the top. And then behind that, it also combined with vegetative screening in the form of an evergreen hedge, which is conditioned to be maintained at a height of 12 to 14 feet. And so effectively, the view of the structure, the new structure, will be blocked from view of Townview Lane cul-de-sac. And then I'd also like to address concerns about HVAC noise. And staff would like to note that all outdoor mechanical equipment is required to comply with ISO section 21040. And then additionally, I'd like to recommend that the commissioners consider an additional condition of approval to the draft resolution tonight that requires the applicant, and it would read as you see: the applicant shall provide HVAC model specifications, including noise levels at the time of building permit submittal, and all HVAC equipment shall comply with performance standards of ISO Chapter 21 in order to prevent any offsite noise disturbance. Staff is able to make the applicable findings to the relative, staff is able to make all applicable findings relative to the standards of review. You'll see in your staff report tonight that compliance with general plan policies are found on pages 8 through 10. The development standards table, compliance table and analysis is on page 11, and then the applicable SPAR findings to ISO section 2410010. That's on, those are pages 11 through 13. And so staff was able to make all applicable findings, and I won't go into great depth as I've tried to incorporate the more pertinent aspects of the findings in the project description. But in summary, the architectural quality and style match the existing campus building. An increased setback and enhanced screening will ensure neighborhood compatibility The single-story building maintains the existing height profile and setback to the adjacent neighborhood. The proposed hardscaping is in keeping with the character of the site, and no substantial changes are proposed to the operations of the site, including access and circulation. And with that, staff recommends to the Planning Commission that they adopt the resolution in attachment A approving the SPAR for Spring Hill facility expansion. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much, Mr. Janasek. Does the applicant have a presentation?
The applicant has a few team members in attendance. They do not have PowerPoint slides, but I think they have application materials that they would like to share as they speak.
Okay, let's do that now then. Thank you.
Should I start?
Yes, please do.
All right, let me share my screen. Hi, I'm Andrew Davis. I am the architect working on the project. And I also did the existing campus design. I have to say, Michael did such a thorough job. I'm afraid I might be a little bit repetitive, so I'll try to move through this quickly and maybe fill in some more information here. I think you do all understand the siting of the existing building, sanctuary, and the portables. I think it was mentioned about comments. Could we tear the sanctuary down? We did originally propose the portables to be in this location. The sanctuary has been determined to be a historic, so that location was not viable. And so we did then move to this location. And what that does for our campus, I would say, is it means that we're able to retain a large outdoor play field for students, and we also have a hard court area here, and we have the parking across the easement also on the same lot. And so I think this really is the most viable location for the classrooms. You can see in the overview here how that current campus looks, bird's eye view. The dirt area is, you see in this back corner, is where the portables are to be located. You can see the fence. There's also an easement along here, and the town view lane beyond. The idea was basically very straightforward, was to keep the portable massing, aligned with the main classroom building. But also, more importantly, to make the new portable outdoor space here part of the main outdoor space that is the campus, and that continues out to North Webster Street. And so you can see, again, in this slide, how that we looked at the continuation of the landscaping and the massing, again, using the prefab structures. As Michael also pointed out, the site does step from this level here down to the main campus, and it does actually step down again at the front. And this is part of the site design that we worked on, where we integrated stairs and ramps to make this all completely accessible. We are slightly grading back here, which sets the portables down from their normal full height if it was on a parking lot, for example. And that helps us keep the portable height aligned with the existing classroom building. In terms of that siting, we did look at continuing the pattern of planters and the spacing of the trees to join the line of the campus together. We are also adding the hedge along Townview to screen the buildings. And there's also, a large group of trees that are existing and going to be protected to also help with screening the buildings. One of the more important parts of the design, I think, and which actually helps the project relate to the existing campus, is to provide an outdoor classroom area. Again, this is about making this work at the level of kind of economy, so that getting some outdoor educational space, I think, is really important to pair that with the interior space as well. And then, in terms of what came up about the current use of the site, this is our existing classroom building right here. And what happened is that the art studio and the cafeteria and the kind of meeting room and library zones are actually right now occupied with regular classroom use. And so what the project does is it's going to take all of those students and put them into these 3 new classrooms, which basically means that the school will gain back its curriculum support spaces, like art and the cafeteria, which is supposed to be part of a food and agricultural outreach program. So there is no real intensification of use on the site, and it is within the limits of what was approved in the last in the 2017 application. I think part of our design intent as well was to try to take these normal portables, which are usually pretty ugly, and actually make them feel like they're part of the campus. And we did primarily try to do that with the kind of arrangement of materials and the types of materials. So you see them in the existing front of the campus here. And that is the palette that we're using with the hardscape surfaces in the outdoor area. Actually using cedar and standing seam metal on the exterior of the building, and looking at using some swap out of windows, so that we will, try to get these portable buildings to really look like they're part of the campus, and to integrate them and to actually, improve their appearance. So we have a view from the lower quad area, and then we have a view looking at the outdoor area that we're establishing for the students. We have been told that there are skateboard issues on the campus, and we will have skate protection or anti-skate devices on these surfaces to try to help control that. And I think also to address, I think green building has come up, and also the code compliance component of this. The buildings are, designed and constructed in compliance with California code, including the green building code. We do understand that Petaluma has adopted a tier 1, except for energy efficiency. So, the buildings themselves do comply with those codes, and we're, working on figuring out how we can work with the portable manufacturer themselves, and also our site work, to make sure that we are gonna hit the tier 1 requirements for the green building component. And part of that does also include the site design, and we have tried to integrate the landscape, and this the new paved area is also being designed in terms of the runoff and stormwater management, so that we're not also creating any kind of additional nuisance in that department. So we're very excited to basically take portables and really try to make the best of it to get this additional space on the campus that the school really needs to kind of complete its function. And that would be about what I have to say for that. I know that the school has other personnel here as well.
Great, thank you very much, Mr. Davis. Is there anybody else that wants to say something briefly or share something briefly from the applicant team? You could stop sharing if you can.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see anybody, so we can end that for now. And now we'll move on to commission questions, the staff and applicant. Then after that, we'll move on to public comment, and we'll do more questions after that based on public comment if needed. So yeah, for now, commissioners, the floor is yours. Raise your hand if you'd like to ask questions of staff or the applicant. Okay, Commissioner Ryder.
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair, and thanks for the presentation all. Couple of questions. I was also curious, these are portable classrooms. Is there, are they intended to be permanent, or are they in fact temporary structures? I guess that's a question for the applicant team.
Yes, I was going to say, is there a member of the applicant team, maybe Andrew or someone from the school?
This is Seth with ABS, applicant with Spring Hill. Yeah, they are intended to be permanent.
Thank you for that. And perhaps a couple of questions for the staff with regard to the historic designation of the sanctuary building. Could you just speak to that? And does that mean that building will not be demolished, cannot be demolished? What the status is of that situation?
Yes, we did have a historical review done about a year ago, and it was designated as historic. We understand dealing with our planner at the time, Tiffany, the hoops that would need to be jumped through to proceed further with demo or such. So we basically put that building on hold and decided to go the route of moving these modular classrooms towards the back. Phase 3 of the campus is to relook at the church on improving it. It would mainly be the interior work on improving the interior work to utilize it for the school. But as of now, it's going to be a little ways down the road.
And I can add to that, Commissioner Ryder. So typically, if a project is proposing to demolish a historic resource that's found to be significant through the historic resource evaluation process, typically a full demolition of that is considered a significant and unavoidable impact and would trigger an environmental impact report, and typically would require statements of overrides to be adopted. So it's not that nothing can happen, but it is definitely a process and more review than demolition of a building that isn't considered historic.
Okay, that's helpful context. Thank you, Director Hines. A question about the zoning, because it is this kind of strange split lot situation. Are there any open space requirements for this type of use in this kind of odd application? Specifically vegetated open space?
So I can speak to that. So the R2 zoning district development standards apply, and they also should, if the development were proposed on the CF portion, like it was in 2017, the R2 standards would prevail in that case as well, as they did. And there's no lot coverage minimum or landscape area minimum in the R2 district.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, just checking my notes 1 second. So I was just looking over the CalGreen requirement, which was discussed very briefly by the applicant in terms of hardscape area. There is a requirement, however, to provide either permanent or tree-based shading of the hardscape for a portion of that. I'm just wondering if the applicant can speak to, of all that, the hardscape that is there, if there's a shading plan in place.
We are continuing the pattern of the trees in the quad, so that, you know, we're trying to provide the hardscape that would be durable for, you know, student outdoor use, and including getting to classrooms, but also outdoor classrooms. But we are planting, you know, the additional trees with this project, and, you know, the idea is that those will grow to maturity and provide some outdoor shade. Yeah.
Great. And I'm sorry, I missed it. What size those trees were, what that you're planting? Do you happen to know?
I don't know that off the top of my head. I'm sorry.
Okay. And then one last question for, well, I can't promise it's the last question, but one question for now. Can someone just speak to how stormwater will be managed given this additional impervious surfaces on the site?
Good evening, everybody. This is Dennis Dalby, Civil Design Consultants. I worked with Andrew on the previous project. I did all of the civil site work for that project, including the stormwater and the BASMA low impact development stormwater treatment. It'll be treated the same as the previous site. This area was already included in the drainage of the previous project. We've already mitigated for any downstream effects, so that's already built into the existing on-site storm drain system. We will meet the requirements of BASMA, which governs your local stormwater requirements through the city, and those will all be met. And we are utilizing some of the existing stormwater basins that you saw in the pictures in between the portables and the existing classroom buildings. And we're actually building new ones that are around the outdoor education area.
Okay, just to make sure I heard you correctly, did you say that the original design actually took into consideration this adjustment to impervious surfaces for this site?
No, it took care of the stormwater capture and release from the site. We're providing new bioretention and new piping system to drain this new area.
Okay, thank you. That's all for now.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Ryder. Commissioner Hooper?
Yeah, I just have a few questions for now. I will say many years ago, the site of that church was also the site of my middle school. And having seen that church in all of its form, I am shocked it's a historic site. But I do have a question. You mentioned long-term looking at restoring some of that original structure, and I understand the point that Heather was making with regards to the CEQA kicking in if we were to actually look at demolishing it. But there were a lot of classrooms and rooms all along that site. Now, from what I remember, I doubt any of that was to code or at all safe, but I just was curious to know if it had been considered first looking at expanding that original site before adding permanent portables. This is for the applicant.
Is there somebody with the applicant team that can respond to that?
And I would just, can I ask for clarification on the question? And I'm not sure I understand the question about expansion.
Had anybody, when looking at this site, I understand the need that you have for the expanded space. Had you looked at any restoration for the classrooms in the church structure before going with adding portable structures on the site? It's okay if you haven't. I was just curious.
You know, we have, we've done some preliminary analysis of the church. We also, in our last application, had tried to actually get approval for use of portions of the church by the school. And that was completely shut down for reasons of fire protection. We need to fire sprinkler the entire building. There's also presence of hazardous materials. So there's going to be some extensive asbestos abatement. Additionally, you get into access issues in terms of there is a small zone of maybe classrooms on the ground level, but the real usable classrooms appear to be on the second floor. So you do get into a lot of ADA accessibility issues. Plus, I guess on top of all that would be seismic retrofit just to make it safe for students. So that is an enormous just price of admission before we even know if those spaces would comply with current code for like heating and cooling and electrical, so it's a huge project. So we are looking into this, and we do want to bring that building back to life and explore the adaptive reuse of the sanctuary. But I think in terms of budget and timing, that's a much bigger project.
No, that makes sense. Thank you. I just wanted to verify it. It's also good to know that we had schools in an asbestos zone. So that's nice to know. Thank you. I did have a question about the portables as well, because with some portables you're looking at just literally a structure in place for a short period of time. For others, you can see major efficiency gains when it comes to power consumption, when it comes to water infrastructure and the like. I was just curious, with these proposed portables, are we looking at something that long-term is going to have issues with repair, or are we looking at something that's designed to be robust for quite some time?
I can't personally speak to the future of these in terms of repair and wear and tear. I would say that they are approved and constructed and inspected during construction under the current code. I think portables definitely do have people that generally don't like them. And that is probably because they are, designed and constructed to minimums, unfortunately. I think we are trying to, enhance them and integrate them in a way that they will be a long-term part of the campus. I think also the issue with them being temporarily on the site was that a temporary building permit for structures in Petaluma, I think, had a very short duration, a matter of months, like not even something that would service a full school year. So I do feel that in terms of their design and construction, I believe that they are, going to be new buildings built to code, and I think. With the grading we're doing and the stormwater protection design around them, we're grading the building pad as well. I think we are making our best effort to make sure that they're going to be durable for some time.
Thank you. That's all for now.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Hooper. Commissioner Wisman?
Yeah, just a couple quick comments and questions. First of all, thank you for the presentation and the report from staff. I thought it was very well prepared and thorough and well presented. So thank you for that. I think most of my questions were answered in the previous segment with regard to the existing sanctuary or church. But I just wanted to be certain, is it condemned or in essentially condemned status right now? And or is there any activity at all, or is there any allowable activity at all from an operational perspective within that structure?
Mike, are you able to, I believe there is some limited storage allowed in the building, but can you give a little more detail on that?
Sure. Yeah, it is limited right now to some storage of, I believe, musical instruments for band programming, and also gym class equipment. And that is all that's currently allowed. And then fire has also conditioned, and you'll see that in your resolution, that fire has conditioned that no occupiable use is allowed until the building has automatic fire sprinklers or a acceptable alternative means of fire protection. But I don't know if I would can say that it's condemned. Yeah.
Okay. No, I think that answers my question. It's effectively out of use other than storage, it sounds like. So, okay.
Until time that fire sprinklers are installed.
Right. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Wisman. I just have a few questions myself. So I heard about the hedge and the fence. So is the hedge going to be high enough at the time of installation to block views from the homes on Townview Lane, or does it need to grow to be able to do that?
So the applicant has worked with staff to identify privet as a species they like to plant. The condition is such that it's open-ended, that it can be another evergreen species, and that would depend on, again, they'd have to get that approval from staff. But the privet, as it currently is situated, is a fast-growing plant, and it would, I don't know the exact number of years it would reach the mature height, but I think within probably 3 to 4 years, it could probably reach that height and then be maintained at the intended height of 14 feet.
Okay, and is there anything that can be done if it doesn't reach that height, replacement or something else?
Yeah, go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, would there be, I mean, we'll inspect the landscaping as part of the building permit and it before occupancy is issued, but I'm not sure from then on if it would be on a complaint basis or if there'd be kind of ongoing inspection from there. Heather, can you add to that?
Yeah, so we would typically ensure that the landscaping is planted according to the approved plans prior to approving occupancy. And then there is a standard condition about keeping landscaping in good growing condition to avoid things from dying. But we have not done something, specifically to say this shall grow X feet within X years. But typically the species choice sounds like it has been made to use a fast growing evergreen to get that screening more quickly and to have it be there year round, as opposed to something that might be slower growing or is a deciduous and only provides that screening. So those are the things taken into account by staff to try to ensure that the screening will be effective for its purpose.
Okay, thank you. And then when we're talking about the screening, does that also include the screening of the rooftop utilities, or is that just the top of the roof?
So there's no mechanical equipment proposed on the flat roof of the portables. The mechanical equipment is wall mounted, and it is intended to screen the equipment.
Okay. Is the particularly the HVAC system, is that on the back end or is that on the side end? Like, is it facing the residences or is it on the side of the building?
It's on the north elevation, facing the cul-de-sac.
Okay. And I know we already talked about there being noise restraints or constraints on it, but is it possible to add additional soundproofing to that? Because it is so close to their homes?
Yeah, I suppose it would be possible to add a equipment specific screen that has noise abatement. I'm not sure if that's been done, but it sounds reasonable if the applicant is amenable to it.
And the condition as it reads ensures that that at the building permit process, staff would be reviewing the specs to ensure that the units are sized and the type and stuff to fall within the allowable noise
Right.
performance standards of the IZO.
No, the noise performance standards, that doesn't mean that the neighbors won't be able to hear it, right? It just means it's under a certain decibel level.
Correct. I mean, yes, similar to anybody's HVAC unit or,
Right. I could hear my neighbor's HVAC unit.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. We might have my windows open. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Moving on. Is there any solar planned for the top of the roof?
There's none proposed, but the applicant may have future plans for solar installation. They might be able to speak to that.
None at this time.
Okay. Let's see. The other thing I wanted to ask was about, let's see, was that the solar? The other thing I wanted to ask was the construction hours. What are the hours of construction that we're going to be proposing? I think it's maybe in there, but I missed it.
It's in there, and it's also consistent with the 2017 M&D conditions. What's that? Construction hours are between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, and between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. on Saturdays. No construction is on Sundays or holidays.
Okay. I know on other sites that have been so close to residential areas, we've limited working hours to Monday through Friday. And I wouldn't be opposed to doing that for this one too, just because it is so close to residential communities, and 6 days a week of construction, bang, bang, bang is a lot. So if my fellow commissioners are with me on that, maybe we can talk about that at some point tonight.
And Vice Chair Bauer, I would love to hear from the applicant on the proposed how long. I know that they're under the gun to try to get construction started after school gets out, I believe, in the spring, and have construction completed before students return to campus in August, I would guess. So I'm not sure if Seth or Andrew, if somebody can maybe touch on the construction, how long you anticipate it to go, and what are some of the factors you're trying to balance here?
Yes, the goal is to start when school is released, which is June 10th, and finish it before school starts back up.
And do you anticipate that you will need 6 days a week, construction 6 days a week in order to do that? Or would construction limitation to 5 days a week still keep you on that schedule?
I was planning to take advantage of the Saturdays, given that it was allowed in this area. So as much as we can, it would be nice, but I understand we're next to residential.
I appreciate your wanting to get this done quickly, but I also think we need to be conscientious of the neighbors and, and how we'll be putting them out. Thank you for that information. I do have two more questions. And was there any consideration for lowering the grade even further to get, I know it's it looks like there's 6 or 8 steps to get up to the portables. Was there any consideration of grading even more, taking another 2 or 3 feet up to even get it to lower there? I don't know if that's been considered or thought out or possible.
Hi, Dennis, Civil Design again. I did the grading, so I should probably answer that one. So the trees that were mentioned that are existing that are in the back corner, what we were attempting to do is get the roof lines of the existing classrooms about the same. So we are sinking them about, I don't know, what are we talking, Andrew, about 2 to 3 feet below the outdoor classroom grade. So without damaging those trees anymore, we thought that we could only go so low before we would really start getting into the root systems and damaging those trees. So we tried to keep it as low as we could, but we also, kept those trees into consideration.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. I did see those trees, and they do seem to be healthy and pleasant to look at least. So I am in favor of keeping those. The other last question I have is, can you just go in a little bit more detail why you weren't considering more putting the classrooms on the southwest portion of the property?
I would say that the southwest corner of the property right now is their kind of outdoor play yard. That is actually has grass and I think sprinklers in it already. And the zone that we're looking at is currently, I think it's bark mulch and dirt. So I think one is just trying to make this work with the materials that are already on the site so that we're not like removing a bunch of things that were just built. Another thing is that the current location does work exactly with the spine, the circulation of spine of the school in terms of the stair and the ramp access and making sure that, everything is on a connected ADA path. And I also think that having the portables where they are means that they're going to screen the outdoor noise more from the neighbors in terms of using the building to act as a buffer between the outdoor activity areas and the neighborhood. So, I think they do, the siting does serve a purpose in that configuration. We did look at rotating the buildings 90 degrees so that the backs of them would be facing the high school. But we actually just couldn't get them to fit with the current site work and layout. And I think it also drove the grading requirement way up as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Davis. Those are the questions I have for now. If there are no follow-up questions at this point, although I know that there may be after public comment, then we will move on to public comment, and I will ask our moderator, Mr. Roberts, to take over from here.
Thank you, Vice Chair Bauer. I see one hand raised. We'll go ahead and share my timer. Okay, Darren Racusin, I've allowed you to speak. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. A quick note about CEQA and just reading some of the notes on public comment and then the responses by city staff said that this was a negligible change in land use. And again, this is something I may be ignorant of the process, but this looks like about 33% increase in square footage as well as student body. I just wanted to see if this is typical to not necessitate CEQA review. I know there is going to be some site grading, some different things that are changing the landscape. There are concerns about stormwater management with more non-permeable surfaces added to the site. You know, I know I'm not a huge fan of CEQA, maybe in instances like this. I'm just wondering if this is typical or if there's anything here. I know there's also this question of, are they permanent? Was the name portable used to kind of make this something that wouldn't get that kind of attention? Does the city have any liability there if one of the upset neighbors from different comments says that an adequate CEQA review wasn't conducted, anything of that nature? And then I actually joined the site on the Western Ave side of things. And I will say that we did not get a notice of the public kind of workshop and comment session. Now, maybe that was just our home that was missed, but on that segment of Western from Ray's Delicatessen up the street, I just wanted to make sure those people were engaged in the process, myself included, because, you know, there are sight lines from our properties as it goes up the hill there. There are sight lines from all those properties onto the Spring Hill School, as well as noise considerations, other things of that nature. So bringing that perspective to the table, is it possible that we could add to that same southwest side of the property, assuming that the portables would be kept where they are? Could we add more tree cover there to reduce sight lines from the Western Ave side? Potentially noise may also create kind of more of a forested cove there for the students in that grass area. And then again, being on this western side, do we have any idea of the future plans for the other R2 zoned area? Right now, it's kind of a no man's land with a parking lot. And I'm just curious if the school has any plans for expansion, because, you know, what's going on with the portables may set a precedent for any continued expansion of the school, i.e., you know, oh, we're building more portables over there. There's no more CEQA or environmental review because it's a negligible change in use. Also, these same considerations about sight lines, noise reduction, things of that nature. So yeah, those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Darren, for your comment. And that was our only public comment on this item. I'll stop sharing my screen and pass it back to Vice Chair Bauer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Roberts. Ms. Hines, I see you have your hands raised. You're muted, sorry.
I do see two other members of the public with their hands raised.
I think they were potentially delayed on my end.
Yeah.
So Todd and Amanda, followed by Carol Harvey. Todd and Amanda, I've allowed you to speak. You'll need to unmute.
Hi, can you hear us?
We can hear you.
All right, so we live at 34 Townview Lane, which is the property directly on the fence line across from these proposed portables. So we are probably the single most impacted directly in terms of these buildings. And so I think the noise is one of our primary concerns. So we would really like to request whatever noise mitigation we can get in terms of noise protection around the units. One thing that we're very concerned about is these trees that are going to be planted are 14 feet tall. That's directly south of our home, which is going to impact our sunlight. South facing is our most important sunlight for our home. So that's going to be a big problem for us. And what we would also like to just propose is that we really reconsider moving these portables to the southwest portion of the property. And I know there's a lawn there already, but that really just seems to be a much more amenable spot for us personally.
Yeah, I think it would really help reduce the noise as well as the visual impact from this side. And we, to be honest, we'd rather hear children playing than HVAC noise, just to let you know.
Yeah.
And we do support the school, and we have a child ourselves, and we're very pro Spring Hill, but we just really hope you reconsider the location of because we have that southwest side available. We really hope you consider that.
Having 3 HVAC units 18 feet from our front door or 20 feet from our front door just will have a significant impact that we hope we can get reconsidered. Anyone else?
No, I think that's it. I mean, obviously our first, we would really, really hope that you could just use the existing footprint of the sanctuary site and figure out the funding for that. It sounds like it's really an issue of funding more than anything else.
And there were a lot of renderings done of the front of the portables, but nothing done from the Town View Lane side. There was a picture of the fence line from our side, but nothing in terms of a rendering or what it would look like from a before and after standpoint from our side of the fence.
And we're hoping that the roof is not white the way it is with the phase 1, that it is a darker color. And grading definitely could help as much as possible.
Yeah. We'll give back the balance of our time.
Thank you for your comment, Todd and Amanda. Appreciate it. Up next is Carol Harvey, followed by M. Riddle Z. Carol, I've allowed you to speak. You'll need to unmute.
Thank you. I do want to say that I did not get notice from the city for this meeting. I got notice from the school in January in the mail, and then I saw the sign in front of the school. So I share Darren's concern about whether neighbors were adequately notified. And I wish I had thought of Darren's use of language in terms of best land use when I sent my earlier comments today about the impermeable and permeable use of the land. I sent photos along with that, my email earlier today. I sent it out about 3:30 or 4 p.m. today, and I included photos of the roof of this sanctuary. My concern is that the school might be intentionally or unintentionally letting it deteriorate to the point that it would have to be condemned in order to tear it down. I'm all for tearing it down. I don't see the historical significance, but I understand that my opinion about that doesn't necessarily matter. But there's significant damage to the roof, and I imagine if it's not leaking, it will be soon. And then what happens? I mean, one, you have this eyesore because it was never, I imagine it was never the school's intention to keep the sanctuary building because it wasn't designed to be integrated. I have no problems with the design of the school and the portables as far as visually, but they are not at all compatible with the sanctuary. And so what happens if this phase 3 is 10 years from now? What's that building going to look like? And then what will it be replaced with? If you're taking out, will they put another set of portables in there? And then you've got this relatively small amount of grass for all these kids. There's a huge parking lot. There's a long driveway. There's really the balance between I guess hardscape, whether it's a building or ramps or concrete planter boxes or a parking lot, compared to there's really a very small amount of grass. It just seems very disproportional. I think I got it all. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Carol. And up next is M. Riddle Z. I've allowed you to speak. You'll need to unmute.
Thank you very much for this opportunity and for your presentation. We appreciate it. My family lives at 39 Townview Lane, which is closest to the phase 1 existing school building. We share a property line and a fence with the school. So we have lived through the demolition and the construction and the disruption to our lives through all that. And now we have next to us, the school, which we're all for a school, but the design of the roof, and I have a question if the new one that you're proposing will match this. Basically, what the problem is for us is the design of the roof is tilted in a way that, and it's a white roof, it directly reflects excessive light into our home and heat. And that's a nuisance. It's an environmental nuisance for us. I mean, and then not to mention the views that we have out of our windows of our living room and dining room, looking right down upon all of this dirty equipment that is on top of this white blaring roof. And it just seems like the back of the building isn't finished where the front of the building is. And I'm just wondering, you mentioned about screening in that one corner where this proposed construction will go, but what about the rest of the entire fence that actually has more of an ugly view than that the whole street can see, especially us, but the whole neighborhood can see? Are you planning to enhance the screening along the whole fence to not only, you know, kind of block that view, but, you know, also just screen so it's consistent, so it's not just one section then it has a little hedge and then the rest is just wide open like this? Looks like the Port of Oakland, and it's dirty and there's exposed wires. That's my one question. The other one is I would like your assurance that the construction crews won't be coming and going through the red zone emergency access between the cul-de-sac, because there's no room there, and it's dangerous, and we would just appreciate if this moves forward that the crews and the materials are not using our street as an access point, because it's right next to our house, and this has already been just a really hard time living next to this. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. And I'll ask for confirmation from Heather that there's no additional hands raised. Oh, I see one more hand raised. Okay, let's see. Isha Gonzalez, I've allowed you to speak. You'll need to unmute.
Good evening, everyone. I just want to say thank you for being here, and I'm very interested in learning how this process goes. As a parent to a small toddler, a prospective parent who'd like to enroll a child here, I find it very exciting that this project is trying to move forward and expand the capacity for the school. It saddens me that so much is being hung up on aesthetic and visual appearance. I think it's safe to say that construction isn't pretty, but the process is worth it to get a school expanded that accepts 4C funding and allows for scholarships to underprivileged and at-risk children. I am personally curious as far as the greenery and the foliage, the landscaping, how much of it is considered to be native, just as far as supporting the local environment and pollinators, and enabling a space for those kids to learn about the environment and taking care of the atmosphere and surrounding, and learning about just food access. But I got in really, really late, and I'm just catching the end of it, but I appreciate being able to partake in a forum like this and to learn about the project. And like I said, prospectively hope to enroll children there. So thank you, guys.
Thank you for your comment, Isha. I'll just provide a few extra moments for any hand raised.
One more.
I do see Roy Martinez. Roy, I've allowed you to speak. You'll need to unmute.
Okay. I actually talked to the school about this back in January. I haven't attended any meetings before, and I did receive a public notice. We live up on Brainerd. My understanding is we're doing these portables because they can't put the buildings where they originally planned to put them because of the church. That's my understanding, and I could be wrong, and I apologize a little bit late for this meeting. But my question is, so I told the school, I think I'm in favor. I think this is great, using the portables, put them there. But my question is, is the school going to make a commitment not to add more when the church comes down? Presuming the church does come down at some point in time. If the portables are plan B, will plan A be taken off the table in the future? And that's my question.
Thank you, Roy. And once again, I'll just provide a few moments for any other members of the public who haven't had a chance to speak on this item. I'm not seeing any additional hands raised. I'll stop sharing my screen and pass it back to Vice Chair Bauer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Roberts. I see that Director Hines has her hand raised.
Yeah, thank you, Vice Chair Bauer. I wanted to just respond to the questions about the CEQA review, just for the record. It wasn't that this project didn't undergo CEQA review. It was that there had been a mitigated negative declaration done at the time that the conditional use permit was issued. This project was looked at in light of the potential impacts and mitigations in that, as well as exemption under categorical exemption under the California Environmental Quality Act guidelines. So I just wanted to clarify, it wasn't that the CEQA wasn't done. And also, in terms of the land use, what we're looking at with this project is specifically the site plan and architectural review, not the use as a school. So it is the siting and the access and the aesthetics and the landscaping and those aspects. But the comment about the land use, I just wanted to kind of set that within the context of the previously approved conditional use permit.
Great. Thank you, Director Hines. We'll now move on to any other additional commissioner questions before we go to commissioner comment at this point. Commissioner Hooper?
Yeah, I thought it was a great point with regards to concerns about the reflective nature of the roof's color. And I was just wondering if that was maybe a simple fix that the applicant would be willing to look at, if that is indeed a concern.
I would like to speak to that as well in response to the public comment. It was brought up at the neighborhood meeting, and staff's understanding of the required building standards are that Cal Green requires heat to be reflected through the use of lighter colored materials. So you'll see that there's a condition in the resolution where the planning manager will review samples of the proposed roof material and color, and to the extent possible under Cal Green, it will mitigate any glare impact. I'd also like to point out the applicant's proposing a flat roof, whereas a completely flat roof, whereas the main campus building has a pitch slope to it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Are there any other questions from other commissioners at this point? No, I have a few. I am curious about why there were no renderings of the building from Townview Lane.
So it's not a submittal requirement of SPAR to produce sightline exhibits. It can be rather intensive to get the appropriate rendering and the sightline and angles from that vantage point. Staff felt that the combination of the opaque evergreen hedge and the fencing would be adequate screening, as it is, it's not required. It's not a development review requirement. It is above and beyond to provide that additional enhanced screening, and so staff felt that it was sufficient in spite of there not being a visualization or an exhibit to demonstrate it.
Okay, thank you. Another question is it a given that construction equipment will not be able to use that emergency access on Townview Lane, or is that something we need to talk about or specify?
Yes, we will not be using that. We did not use that during the construction of the other one. It's mainly just a sewer easement for the city, that access gate.
Okay.
And if that is not a condition, that is something that we could add as a condition.
Yeah, well, I assume that it maybe was used last time, or there was some. Otherwise, I don't know if there would be. I don't know where the neighborhood complaints came from then if it weren't used last time, but maybe we should add that just in case. My other question was, I don't know if anybody will know this, but was there anything in the original approval for the first building about any shrubs or screening or anything like that? Does anybody know that?
I believe the applicant rebuilt the fence on that along that property line, but the staff did review that that site plan and what was approved and then what was permitted through construction drawings, and found the what exists on the ground to be in substantial conformance with what was approved.
Okay, so maybe we didn't approve shrubs back then.
I don't think that they must not have been proposed.
Sounds like it would have been a good idea at the time, but okay. And then the last bit I have is, I guess, what do you think went wrong with the noticing? Is that was that not that we had to mail the neighbors individual notices, or how did that work?
Yeah, so this project, there was mailed notices to 1,000-foot radius that was posted on site, and it was posted in the Argus, or it was published in the Argus, meeting all of our noticing requirements. So, we definitely can go back and look through the list for individual people to answer clarifications or see if they're outside of that. But those were the noticing steps taken.
Maybe we should do a little QA/QC at some point just to make sure however the method we're doing it is capturing everybody that it needs to capture in the future, to make sure our programs are working correctly, because it seems like some people on Townview Lane didn't get the notice and they're right there. So okay, that's all the additional questions I have, and thank you very much, staff and applicant, for answering them. And now I'm happy to move on to commissioner comment on the project. Commissioner Hooper?
Yeah, I would just say that in a lot of ways, this seems like a perfectly reasonable expansion. I think the location is unfortunate because of the condemned site, because of the historic church. Mind you, I recognize that's something that's outside of everyone's control. I also would assume that if the church were something that could be removed, they wouldn't be proposing portables, so that all makes sense. I am glad to know that there's going to be consideration for construction hours. I'm glad to know there'll be consideration for the light gradient or the color gradient for heat dispersion on the roof. I do recognize where a lot of neighbors might have issue with this, especially because of the kind of afterthought when it comes to the shrubs and really looking at their sight line. That being said, this does seem like a perfectly reasonable addition for a school in need of extra space that seems to be keeping quite well to itself. So I think with the added considerations that were discussed before, this is a perfectly reasonable project. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Hooper. Well, I can go right now, I guess. I don't think personally enough thought was given to putting these portables on the southwest corner of the property. I think that would alleviate a lot of the neighbors' concerns, very valid concerns. And I think having some sprinklers in the ground and some turf is not a good enough reason. So I would like them over there. I think they're too invasive, and we've already seen that the existing ones cause quite a bit of problems to the existing neighbors. So I'm not sure personally I'm willing to give them another shake at it. I'm going to hold out for now until we can place this in a more responsible location that will be more harmonious with the neighbors. But I'm happy to hear what the other commissioners have to say about that. Commissioner Ryder?
Yes, to that point, I suppose, Vice Chair Bauer, I was looking at the zoning and thinking through this project if I were a neighbor, and the potential for this parcel, the R2 portion of it, theoretically could be sold and developed as a residential. And just going through that thought process, trying to think of how that impact might differ compared to what is proposed here. And comparatively, it seems pretty reasonable because you probably get something that's fairly similar and likely taller in that location if there was something else. That was my thought process when just considering the options here. I thought that there was a lot of thought given. It does seem like there's still consideration if the immediate adjacent neighbors don't like the idea of the tree plantings. And frankly, I'm concerned about privets in general because they're super invasive. But that seems like something that is pretty minimal in the scheme of things to be worked out. And hopefully we would allow some good neighbor conversations to happen to facilitate that. Definitely the reflectivity of the roof is a bit of a frustration on the existing building, but it sounds like that's being largely mitigated in this new project, given the slope of the roof. And frankly, the adjacent height situation, if it were lower, that would be more of a problem for reflecting that light and heat off of it, in my opinion. So those are certainly things that seem like they've been considered fairly adequately. One question I guess I have for staff, and this is where I get myself into trouble. I suspect the answer is no, but is there an opportunity to have a consideration to how many compressors service the HVAC units for these three buildings? I'm not a mechanical engineer, but given the size of the structures proposed, it seems very plausible a single compressor should be able to serve 3 different supply heads in each of these classrooms without much hesitation. So I don't want to do the design for the design team, that's their job, but if there's some way for us to give consideration to that potential HVAC noise, I'd love to hear suggestions from staff.
I don't have a specific, but I guess I'm curious from the applicant team if they've considered the number of compressors needed for this project.
Each classroom, there's 3 classrooms. Each classroom comes with a heat pump connected to each one. So there will be 3.
And are they all on the back, or are the end ones on the sides and the middle one at the back?
They're all on the back.
And do they come that way
Prefab, correct,
as modular units.
correct.
All right, so it's not a split compressor option. That's what I'm hearing. Okay.
That's correct. That's how it comes.
All right, I'll think on that some more and open it up to my other commissioners. Thanks.
Commissioner Wisman, do you have anything to add?
No, nothing to add, other than my earlier questions. I think they were adequately answered. I'm generally supportive of the project. It sounds like they have dealt with a number of site issues that were kind of hemming him into location, and I think they've done a considerate job here in serving their needs and also mitigating as much as possible any obstruction or otherwise considerations that the neighbors might have. So I'm satisfied with what I've heard so far.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Wisman. I think it looks like we have 3 commissioners that are supporting and 1 isn't. If that's not the case, speak up. Because if it is, then it looks like we have enough to move forward, but I would like to talk about maybe the conditions of approval, which I think Dr. Hines can speak of, but from the ones I remember hearing was the original one for the HVAC noise ordinance. We'd also talked about additional noise abatement enclosure. We talked about changing the construction times to not include Saturdays, and then also not using Townview Lane for any construction purposes. So if any of you commissioners want to comment on those, I'm sure Director Hines might appreciate it.
I would also going back to so there is already a condition in, and Michael, please correct me if I'm incorrect on this, but there's already a condition in there that says that the HVAC units prior to permitting shall include specs to verify prior to issuance of permits that they will meet noise requirements. And then there's an additional condition that says the HVAC units shall not exceed noise performance standards as included in the IZO. So those 2, is that correct, Michael?
Those, yes, that was presented as a single,
as a single condition.
Additional,
okay, but
yeah, condition
okay.
approval. It would need to be added to the draft resolution.
Oh, they're not in the draft resolution, that condition.
Yeah, that was in response to a public comment
Okay.
that came
Okay.
after publishing.
Okay, so adding that to the resolution, and then we could also add no construction vehicle use or construction activity vehicle use off of Townview as a condition. It sounds like that's the intent as expressed by the applicant, but we could add that as a condition.
What Director Hines, what I was proposing was to have even an additional noise abatement enclosure, because this is a school and they, unlike a home, could have their AC on a lot during the day, which I think would be fairly disturbing to the fellow residences. So I was looking to go above and beyond the normal noise, HVAC ordinance rule, because I still know it's going to be loud, because it still is. So, and I think the home is so close to the school, which will be going on all day. I think it might be worthy having an additional noise abatement enclosure there. But that's my opinion, and if I have other support from other commissioners, we could talk about that. Commissioner Wisman?
Yeah, I did want to counter the idea of restricting Saturday construction. In my experience, construction takes a certain amount of time in terms of hours of construction, and it's usually preferable to all parties, the contractors as well as neighbors, to, get activity in and out. And if we restrict Saturday construction, then all you're doing is you're basically lengthening the duration of the construction to go, more weeks into on the back end of the project. So I would just ask commissioners to consider that, whether it's better just to cram as much construction hours into the duration that's on schedule right now, rather than extend that duration by taking Saturdays out. So that'd be my only counterpoint.
Thank you, Commissioner Westman. Commissioner Hooper?
Yeah, on the construction note, I would just say, I would hope the purpose of these portables as well is that it would be a shorter construction time overall. And with that in mind, I think giving the neighbors a little bit of peace for their weekends is a good idea, especially given their other concerns. And I did just want to support measures, really making sure there's extra protection for sound protection. The southwest corner that was discussed, aside from the fact that we don't have any kind of visualization of what that would look like, I wonder how much longer construction might be. I wonder what the hookups might look like for that and whether or not there's the infrastructure to connect. But even so, for this, I would like to make sure that we're doing everything possible as part of the condition to make sure we're minimizing the noise.
Commissioner Ryder, do you have opinions on those other conditions of approval?
Yeah, perhaps we can get a more clear answer on I know it's hard when you haven't run the numbers, but after we've discussed the Saturdays on or off the table, I'm wondering if the applicant has any reaction that they can share in terms of how that might impact the viability of completing construction prior to the school year.
Yeah, if it's helpful for the residents, we're happy to, forgo Saturdays, and we'll do our best to make it happen over the summer.
Is there some middle ground potential for limiting the types of activities on Saturdays so that we can keep on construction without there being much noise impact? Like, I'm perfectly fine allowing planting, for example. That seems very reasonable. But are there other kinds of activities? It seems like it's a lot of grading that's happening. I don't know if you're dropping in units, how this construction would look like, but I just wonder if there's other ways that we can give Saturdays, but also give Saturdays to the neighbors.
Absolutely. It would be hard to tell kind of how things fall on what would happen on those Saturdays, but landscaping or interior work inside the portables classrooms, would be nice to be able to, work on during a weekend. But, I know it's going to be kind of choppy to write a condition like that. So, if it's easier just to forgive Saturdays, we'll make it work.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
I see, Tracy, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I had it just up. I just wanted, if Seth says we can get it done for the start of school, that's great. I'm really concerned about it not being completed. And then our teachers are moving students into the cafeteria again, and then starting the school year and having to transition those students and teachers is huge. So my concern about making sure it truly can be done for the start of school, for the consistency in those kids' education is important. But I trust his timeline.
Thank you, Tracy. Commissioner Ryder?
Yeah, just to that same point, my concern would be not just the students at this school. We are talking about lots of other schools in this neighborhood. And anybody who's driven around that region before school hours or pickup time knows that it's a bit of mayhem between the different schools. So certainly finishing construction prior to that seems in everyone's best interest.
Mm-hmm. Director Hines and Planner Janicek, is it possible to write a condition where we can allow construction Monday through Friday and Saturdays for interior work and landscaping only?
Yeah, so I was just working on the construction hours, I think it was 8 to 6, Monday through Friday. And construction on Saturday limited to 9 to 5 and only including landscaping and interior work.
Okay.
That gives a little bit more flexibility that some stuff, especially the kind of some final stuff, if needed, can happen on a Saturday to grant them a little more flexibility.
Commissioner Ryder?
Sorry, I thought in the presentation it was 9 to 3 on Saturdays. Can you just confirm that end time?
I was not intending to lengthen the hours.
Okay.
I thought it was 9 to 5, but
It's 5. Director Hines, you're correct.
9 to 5
First-
on Saturday,
Correct.
and then prohibited on Sunday.
Mhm.
Yes. Yep.
So we can definitely add that as a condition.
Great. Okay, I know I heard a affirmative from Commissioner Hooper about additional noise abatement enclosures, and Commissioner Ryder, Commissioner Wisman, do you want to opine about that, or Commissioner Ryder, sorry.
Okay, so I'm wondering what's possible given that these are window units as described. So it's not like they're in a separate stationary piece that can have a fence around it, as far as I understand it. So perhaps the applicant can speak to what options there might even be for noise abatement structures.
Seth, do you want to go?
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that, yes, the units are mounted on the backs of the portables. That is how they come from the factory. I love the idea of having a remote unit, although I think we're going to get into a lot of issues where we're going to start customizing something that comes as a package deal. And, that, of course, is going to impact efficiency and cost and schedule and everything like that. In terms of a sound enclosure or sound wall that would have to really contain the noise, my experience with this is that it would need to be a fairly tall structure, and it would need to be very robust, something on the order of concrete or masonry, to actually really help with the noise. A little beyond my experience, that's my kind of preliminary concern. So I am concerned that we might be building a structure that's, as tall or taller than the fence, for example, to try to effectively contain noise. And so I just wanted to put that out there. Seth?
Yeah, all sounds fair. Yeah.
I thought they had sound blankets for those things, but no.
This is, I'm not sure. Possibly they do. I am just concerned about the level that we might have to go to meet a condition, if that is in fact what happens.
This is Dennis at Civil Design again. Just to put a little perspective on it, the 34 Townview Lane, the people that spoke, they're the nearest house to these portables. When I look at aerial photos and I take a little measurement, the closest distance is about 30 feet. So we're talking more than most backyards. Their building wall is 30 feet away from the back of the portables. There's some space there. It's not as close, I think, as people are believing.
Okay, Commissioner Wisman?
Yeah, I'm from what I've heard, I'm not inclined to support the sound dampening measures. Vice Chair Bauer, I think if there was something possible that was immediately local, like a sound blanket or something like that, I think that could be reasonable. But these are prefab units, and I live in a high dense neighborhood myself with a couple of neighbors with air conditioning. It's certainly not my first choice of what I'd want in the backyard, but as long as it complies with code, I think that is stringent enough constraint, and so I certainly wouldn't be in favor of anything more drastic that I've heard so far.
All right, well, thank you. Well, hopefully it doesn't sound like there's support for additional soundproofing, but hopefully the applicant will look into that on their own and put the reasonable barriers in place, if possible, like sound blankets or maybe hoods or something like that over, so the sound can be directed downward instead of out. Something like that would be, I'm sure, very appreciated by the neighbors. So I encourage the applicant and the design team to please consider that when they're doing the install. Okay, I think it sounds like we've discussed the needed things. Director Hines or Mr. Janasek, do you need anything else from us? Any other information?
We would need a motion, but my notes indicate that such a motion likely would have a condition about the limitation on construction vehicle use off of Town View, the limitation on construction hours to landscaping and interior work on Saturdays, and adding that additional condition about the specs for the HVAC units and the requirement that they meet performance standards, really, outlining that as in the condition too. So I think those are the added conditions that I've heard support for. Anything I'm missing, Michael?
The only other thing would be we could add a consider as opposed to a shall on potential sound blankets or hoods for noise dampening.
I like that.
We could do that since we don't, but obviously the intent is not to build a large structure that actually has more of a visual impact.
Yeah, we could say equipment specific as opposed to a large sound wall.
Assistant City Attorney Brady.
Yeah, thanks, Vice Chair. Could we also add in the resolution one of the findings, just the CEQA portion, the environmental compliance in the staff report? Typically, we have that, and it was not included in this one.
Just the standard reference back to the CEQA finding in the staff report, just making sure that we add that in. Got it. Anything else you need from me, Vice Chair Bauer?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I just need a motion to for the Planning Commission to approve the SPAR for the Spring Hill expansion. Commissioner Ryder?
So I will make a motion for the SPAR approval for the Spring Hill portable expansion to include the additional recommendations, including the HVAC specifications, construction time limitations for Saturday, limitations of Town View Lane construction vehicle access, consideration of an equipment-specific sound dampening, and CEQA findings to be included in this, referencing the staff report. I think I've got it all, but as discussed.
You got it.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Ryder. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Okay, Commissioner Hooper seconded it. Ms. Ellis, can you please do a roll call vote?
Okay, Potter, absent. Bauer,
No.
Hooper,
Yes.
Ryder,
Yes.
Wistman,
Yes.
McDonald absent. And that's 3 yeses, 1 no.
Great.
Motion passes.
Motion passes, and we'll go ahead and close that item, and thank you very much to staff, applicant, and the public for coming and participating. Thank you very much, and good night to those that are going to sign off now. For the rest of us, we're going to stick around for item B, which is a zoning text amendment and consideration of a zoning text amendment to modify the implementing zoning ordinance of table 4.3 about our visibility requirements. And if anybody, unless anybody needs a 5-minute break, we can move on. But if you do, please say so we can add that in. Oh, well, guess what? Trudge on. Okay, great. And it looks like our own director, Heather Hines, will be giving that presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Bauer. I don't have this is not an easy item to create a fancy staff presentation PowerPoint. So I'm just going to do it verbally. So as you will recall, recently the city adopted a visitability and universal design ordinance that requires certain building code requirements for new construction in order to address the needs of our aging population, members of our population with limited mobility, and allowing our aging population to age in place through the ability for our new construction to meet their needs or be easily converted to meet their needs. So when both the Planning Commission and the City Council reviewed this item, which was a municipal code amendment, both bodies were overall very supportive of the new legislation, but both brought up a concern about how these requirements might impact the ability for us to have mixed use in our mixed use zones, and especially those areas where we want those activity generating uses on the ground floor. So this was especially true when you're thinking about kind of lower rise buildings that are not being proposed with elevators because it is not, you're not able to meet those new code requirements for units if no units can be on the ground floor. So at the direction, the request of the Planning Commission and the direction of the City Council, staff indicated that we would return to add some more flexibility into the code to allow mixed use buildings to be able to achieve both our desire for mixed use and our new visitability and universal design requirements. So currently, our existing regulations specify that residential and mixed-use buildings is only allowed on upper floors. In all 4 of our mixed-use zones, they're permitted with a footnote 10, which says only allowed residential, only allowed on upper floors. So this obviously, unless you have a building that is going to have an elevator, really precludes you from having mixed-use buildings and meeting our new visitability regulations. So in order to address this conflict, to achieve visitability units, visitable units, universal design in units in mixed-use buildings, the proposed zoning text amendment is to change that footnote from 10, which is only on upper floors, to 6, which said the residential would be behind ground floor activity generating uses on upper floors or through a use permit. So it provides a little bit of flexibility. It clearly is saying our preference is that the residential is on the upper floors or behind another ground floor use, so we can gain that activity generating uses on the ground floor, but recognizing that there may be different options to look at on a case-by-case basis to achieve consistency with both the visitability and the desire to have mixed-use buildings. So the change is really to that footnote for the 4 mixed-use zoning districts to provide the ability to look at it creatively on a case-by-case basis, and a little more flexibility to achieve those requirements. So the item is before the Planning Commission for recommendation to the City Council, as is required for all zoning text amendments. Your staff report does look at findings under general plan, public convenience and necessity, and really the zoning text amendment is proposed at the direction of the council and the urging of the Planning Commission when previously looking at those new building standard requirements. So I am happy to answer any questions, and that's all I have on this item.
Great, thank you very much, Director Hines. I'll now go to questions from commissioners. Any questions? Oh, I saw Commissioner Ryder.
Full of questions tonight. I don't actually have questions on the specifics of this change, and so perhaps this is slightly ill-placed, but I wanted to see if I was, because I missed the original meeting and I watched it back, but I still had some outstanding questions about applicability. Does this specifically address 2 to 4 unit multifamily complexes, or like this 2 stories and below, or are we talking about a certain height restriction?
The visitability or this change?
Visitability specifically, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's for all new residential. So there's a because it definitely applies to single family homes as well as multifamily. And it I don't have it in front of me, but I know there was a under a certain number of units, it was a visitability requirement, and at a certain number of units, it was a universal design requirements.
Right. Okay. So if I'm interpreting that correctly, then there will be no more second floor walk-ups. Is that right?
Well, it depends. So it depends because there's a percentage. So there might not be a building that is entirely second story walk-ups. So
Okay.
my recollection is with the universal design, it was 30% of the units had to have the universal design. So that could mean that you had some that were ground floor and then others that could be a second story walk up.
Okay. I'll look back at my notes and maybe circle back when it goes to council, but I seem to recall there was a narrow window of smaller unit sizes where it actually limited some design considerations, but I'll withhold those questions for them. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, Commissioner Ryder. Any other commissioners? I have one question. So if we had a building that was zoned for mixed use commercial, ground floor commercial, and the applicant proposed, instead of having the ground floor commercial, to meet the visitability requirements, ground floor residential instead, would that come before us and be approval based on our discretion, planning commissions?
So if it came with just residential, then it's not a mixed use building. It's not residential in a mixed use building. Then
Right.
it's just a multifamily.
Right, I'm talking about one that is mixed use with,
Right. And so that one, I think there's certain, I had that pulled out. There are certain, so right now, mixed use, just residential, straight residential, is a conditional use in the MU1A and the MU1B. It's a permitted use in the MU1C, and it is not allowed in the MU2. So there was no change proposed there. But what we did change, or what we are proposing to change, is residential in a mixed use building. So for instance, that is allowed in MU2, where just a straight residential building is not. But then, it would, instead of only being on the upper floor, it could maybe have a portion of the ground floor street fronting. So maybe you had some units on the ground floor, and then you had some kind of mixed use, and then you had others on top, or maybe you had depending on the configuration, maybe you had a store front in the front with like an entry in the back and some units, you know, an entry that wrapped around units in the back, let's say, or some other configuration. It just gives it more flexibility to look at what would work.
And that would be open to our discretion though, that putting of the residential, you know, in lieu of what would have been first floor commercial?
So it would be through a conditional use permit. So,
It would come up to us.
so that could be a minor use permit if it was 5 or under or less units, because that is typically, that's something that can be approved administratively in the current regulations. A new building with 5 or fewer units can be approved administratively. So theoretically, a smaller one could be approved through a minor use permit.
I'm more thinking about like a haystack, you know.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Where that, you know, if they were to come and say, no, we want to meet your visibility requirements, we want to take all of this commercial ground space and do it all residential, you know, and what would be our response to that, you know?
Well, that would no longer be a mixed use building. So then we would look at, we would look at, is mixed use allowed in whatever zone you're, or I'm sorry, is multifamily allowed in whatever zone you're in? And do you have some other kind of requirement that requires you to have commercial, you know, in this area, on this street, that kind of thing.
I think that.
But any project the size of a haystack level project is going to come before the commission.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you. Then I'm good. Anybody else? No? Okay, then let's see. Well, let's go to public comment then. Mr. Roberts.
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair Bauer. I see one hand raised. I'll share my timer. And once again, Darren Recuson, I've allowed you to speak. You'll need to unmute.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. I know there was pretty robust discussion about this at the council meeting where it was presented. And so in terms of this modification, you know, it seems to just offer more flexibility. I guess just to confirm here, is commercial in a mixed use setting, is commercial under the new visibility and universal design, visitability and universal design, exempt, the commercial portion of the building exempt from the same considerations as the residential? As I recall, the visitability and universal design only applied to new residential, whether that's single family or multifamily. But I just wanted to confirm and just explain why stake or property owners may say, I need to add residential to the first floor to meet the visitability requirements. I'm just unclear on, you know, those questions go hand in hand. I'm unclear how that would make them meet those requirements by adding residential, and whether or not, you know, a commercial is still has to abide by both visitability and universal design. Thanks.
Thank you, Darren, for your comment. And I'm not seeing any additional hands raised on this item. I'll stop sharing my screen and pass it back to Vice Chair Bauer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Roberts. We'll close public comment now, and now move on to commissioner comments.
Chair Bauer, would you like me to respond to that question from
Yes.
a member of the public? So Mr. Recuson is correct that the visitability and universal design requirements do not apply to commercial. They only apply to new residential. And the reason for that is there is already accessibility requirements for commercial. So commercial office, those uses that are open to the public, there are already accessibility requirements under the building code. So the new local standards adopted by the city only apply to new residential.
Thank you very much for clarifying that, Director Hines. Okay, now we can move back to commissioner comments. Any commissioner up? Commissioner Westman? Oh, you're muted, Commissioner Westman.
Thanks. That last comment that you made, Director Hines, is that applicable also if there's a permit required for major remodeling or some major renovation with these?
With the
also?
visitability,
Yes.
I believe it is only new construction. Because one of the reasons to do that is some of those requirements can be very tricky if you're remodeling. So for instance, the width of your hallway, right? It's a lot easier to make that hallway a little bit wider when you're constructing it than because you're doing a remodel of your kitchen and bathroom all of a sudden to have to, change walls and, the entry to your house and some of those requirements. So we did talk about that during the adoption, and it is only new residential units for that reason.
Okay. Thanks for the clarification.
Great, thank you very much, Commissioner Wissman. Commissioner Hooper?
I mostly just wanted to commend staff for how quickly they turned this around. I know a lot of us are really excited about the idea of these more accessible universal design standards and the changes that would be made so that folks could really age in place here. And I'm glad to see this coming before us. I hope there's more changes in the future. And thank you for the clear thought you put into this.
Great. Any other commissioner comments at this point? Oh, okay, then I think we'll be looking for a motion to approve the zoning text amendment for the visitability regulations for new residential construction.
Just for clarification, it's a zoning text amendment for table 4.3 to help create more flexibility to implement. Just for clarification, just that we've already adopted the visitability ordinance itself.
Thank you for that clarification, Director Hines. We'll need a motion for that. Commissioner Hooper?
I will make the motion to adopt.
Great, thank you. And can I get a second, please?
Seconded.
Commissioner Wissman, great. And Miss Ellis, can we get a roll call vote, please?
Okay, Potter, absent, Bauer,
Aye.
Hooper,
Aye.
Ryder,
Aye.
Westman,
Yes.
McDonald, absent. And it's 4 yeses.
Great, thank you very much, Miss Ellis. We'll go ahead and close this item, and we'll move on to adjourning the meeting at this point. I do have one aside question that I was going to ask Ms. Hines is, do you know anything about us going into when we go back in person, or?
I do not. We have been working at the council level to do it. It has had some ups and downs and interesting twists and turns. It is a very intensive process to do the hybrid version. So I have not been, I've not received any input on when all the CCBs will be going back in person, but we'll definitely keep you updated. I also wanted to let you know that we will not have a second meeting in May. There is nothing on that agenda. So a little break and see you back for the June 14th meeting.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a great night. Good night.
Recording stopped.